Right, guys. So good evening, and this is the third session that we're having together. So we have another paper to look at. So this is Rinpas 2024 paper. Okay, and compared to the previous two, even more than IBHAS, it is like way more easier. If IBHAS is something that people said 95 was the cutoff, I'm not sure if this will have something like 95, maybe 96. I'm not sure if they have a negative marking. Has anyone written Rinpas in the previous years? Like 2023, 22, or in 24, have you guys written pass? Any idea what the usual cutoff is? No one? Okay. No one has written pass. It's a government institution, right? I thought like people would be more popular about government institutions and write government institution exams more often. No one has written earlier. Okay, that's fine. All right, so we'll start with answering and we'll have a brief explanation of why this is the answer. So this is like 100 questions. We'll like, rush through them because they are like very simple, would not require much of explanations. Okay, so Marston Johnson's sequence of human sexual response. You guys can answer with me. So the usual, you guys put, okay, negative marking is there. Good. So that would mean you can expect around, if you have 5 wrong answers, let's say you will lose 1.25. Okay, so that will be again 93 to something like that. I believe like 90s or something can be the cut off for this because it is not uh, so difficult. So it's kind of on the easier side. All right, so back to the question. So while we're answering, you guys put it in the chat. So whatever you think is the right answer, A, B, C, or D. Okay, so and then we'll go along with this. Already marked the first one. So Marston Johnson said first there is excitement. Oh, sorry, excitement, plateau. So a person orgasms and then resolution. So resolution has to reach its baseline and then may resolve to again go forward or not to go forward. So those things. So that would be the correct answer. Then moving on. Okay, so this is again a very simple, even though application based things are there, questions are way too straightforward. So Amit met with an accident, turned into an impulsive, irresponsible, and less concerned with the consequences of his action. And he must have suffered damage in which lobe? Oh, -1 for each wrong answer. That would mean you have 4 for each correct answer. Is that it? For Rinpas? Because usually 25% is the negative marking. So Rinpas is +4 for correct answer, -1 for wrong answer. Is that how it is scored? Okay, so what's the answer for this one? So very easy, straightforward. Okay, if you guys are taking so long, I'll say it's frontal lobe. Okay, so if you guys can remember any case that you usually come across that also talks about a person having an accident and then being impulsive, aggressive, and earlier was very premorbidly was very friendly, a happy-go-lucky person, changed into very impulsive, rude sort of a person. So +2 for each, -1. That is unlikely. So 50% cutting for wrong answers. Oh my God. Okay. Maybe that's their way to compensate for the easy questions. I didn't know this. You know what? Let me just check the actual paper. I might have it around. Booklet Rinpas. So this is the actual scanned paper. 2 marks will be avoided for each correct answer. 1 mark deducted for each wrong answer. Oh my God. Okay, so this is the twist. That is full marks is 200. So this is the reason why the answers are like questions are so easy. Okay, so now it makes sense. Okay, so what is the answer? So it is HM's case. So if you remember HM, he had like a rod which went through his eye socket and then the other side. So mostly the frontal lobe was affected, particularly the prefrontal. So he was more impulsive, more easy to aggress, things like that. Okay. So if you talk about the other lobes, temporal lobe is usually for speech, um, reception of speech, memory, and then you can also say identifying objects, agnosias. They can be like pretty common when you have temporal lobe damage. So when you have parietal lobe damage, you are more likely to have maybe tingling sensations, weird sensations on the body, like touch like sensations. Paresthesias are common. You may have acalculia, or you may have apraxias, movement based disorders, difficulty coordinating visual and things. So those are more parietal lobe. So difficulty identifying a particular thing, reaching out for a moving object, that'll be more cerebellar also, but parietal also some has some functions of this. Occipital is for more basic visual based stimulus, not being able to see certain colors despite having proper blindness, not color blindness, seeing things in gray. So those things can be occipital lobe, particularly Broca's, not Broca's, what is the name? Brodmann's area, 17, 18 and all. So you will have some presentations like that. Frontal lobe is typically for response inhibition, so impulsive and not being responsible. And planning is also could be affected and less concerned with the consequences. So apathy. So typical frontal lobe syndrome. Okay. Reflexes are usually controlled by, again, way too simple, spinal cord. Please don't say hypothalamus. These are like for controlling the hormonal system using the pituitary. So medulla is for controlling your basic autonomous functions. Frontal lobe we already discussed. Okay. So spinal cord is about controlling your reflexes. So we'll be very quick. Sorry, Phineas Gage. HM was also there, but he had memory issues. Okay, so I meant to say Phineas Gage. Thank you for correcting that. So which option is not a compulsive behavior within OCD? Okay, so there's a change in OCD from 10 to 11, right? Also in DSM. So earlier this was considered part of OCD. Right now it is not. So which one is it? So which of the following is not a compulsive behavior in OCD? You can put it in the chat. Some people may miss out. This is not as easy if you didn't know the change. So which of the following is not an option or is not a compulsive behavior in OCD? Hoarding, good, right? So hoarding is a separate disorder. So they put it under impulse control disorder right now. Okay, good. So which most human characteristics determined by many sets of genes? They are called, okay. So most human characteristics are determined by many sets of genes. Grammatical mistake on the part, it's okay. And they are called polygenic. So even if you think multigenic, it's not the right term. It is just a layman term to confuse you. The actual term is polygenic. Others are like just made up things. So Mongolism occurs due to trisomy of 20, trisomy of 21, trisomy of 23, or extra Y chromosome. So basically Mongolism in a way is the same as Down syndrome. It is not Mongolism exactly, it's Mongol idiocy or something like that. So it's Down syndrome. And what they mean is the mental retardation caused by Down syndrome. So what is the extra chromosome in Down syndrome? 21, right? Good. So simple and moving on again. So which of the following are symptoms seen in a child who has experienced trauma? Definitely not good academic performance. Why would they even put that as an option? And aggression, possible, but it is not exactly tied to trauma itself. May be there because of some personality changes that can happen because of it. But most likely people blame themselves. That's a common presentation. Definitely not tendency to play with other children. Okay, 21, sorry, self-blame. So which of the following may occur in expressive language disorder? And I saw in this paper that wherever they had this option, all of these, all of the above, that was the the correct answer. So questions could have definitely been framed better, and the options definitely would have been, could have been way better framed. So instead of how it is framed. Anyways, expressive language disorder has limited amount of speech output and difficulty learning new words and difficulty finding the right word also. Okay, so there are all some characteristics of expressive language disorder. Sometimes you may also have receptive, then you call it RELD, receptive expressive language disorder. Okay, so usually we don't, my exposure with such cases are very limited, even in my child and adolescent posting. Anyway, so which of the following is not a physical cause associated with phonological disorder? Okay. So cerebral palsy can actually be a physical cause for phonological disorder because they'll not be able to pronounce, and so many difficulties in terms of physical functions does happen. Hearing impairment is a physical cause, can lead to difficulty saying or pronouncing things. Cleft palate also is responsible. Small frontal lobes does not, even though it may be considered physical, does not directly translate into phonological disorder. A lot of other things can happen like impulsivity, maybe slurred speech if it's the Broca's area and things like that, but definitely not phonological disorder per se. Depends on the extent and focus of damage. So small frontal lobes will not be the physical cause. Broca's aphasia, it can happen if the Broca's area is affected. RELD, so this Broca's aphasia is for which question? This one or the previous? Go on to the next one in the meantime. No, RELD is not the same as Broca's aphasia. Stuttering is a disturbance in the normal fluency and time patterning of speech. Okay. So it is inappropriate for the age. Which of the following is involved? All of the above. Because I tell you, any question they have asked is kind of like all of the above. Not just that, but we'll discuss. Frequent repetitions or prolongation of speech happens in stuttering. So pauses within words. So they will like pause and may not be able to make that sound. And filled or unfilled pause in speech, kind of in a way this. So it is all of these. Okay. So I'll stop at a very difficult question and ask you guys, don't worry. Which of the following is an example of open-ended question? And this is like almost kind of common sense is enough to answer this. Very abused in you don't ask it so directly. But this is a yes or no question. Was your family dysfunctional? Yes or no question. Were you the victim of any kind of abuse? Yes or no question. Right. So what were things like? That's more open-ended. But please don't ask directly, like phrasing this without context. So usually go from open-ended to more closed and particular questions. So if a person is able to say all these things with the open-ended question itself, then it's good because they will give you so much extra information also. When you're not getting a particular thing that is kind of in the back of your head saying this may have happened, so you can interview them using very particular questions. But please don't go with direct questions without starting with open-ended, especially with a question like very abused in your family. So the rapport will be affected. Okay, so that is the main reason. All right. So which of the following is not specifications of POXO Act 2012? So recording of the statement, it is present at a place where the child is comfortable. It can be the residence or any other place of the child's choice. Because like sometimes POXO Act, abuse can happen in the residence also. So child can choose any place. Definitely not the police station. Okay. So this definitely is not part of the POXO Act. Police officers should not be in uniform, so they can be in mufti and other clothing as well, civilian clothing. No aggressive questioning. Yeah. So they should ask very specific questions and they should not reveal the name of the child to the media. So that is one big no in POXO Act, or in even rape case that is not recommended, but POXO Act, no, that is a big no, and that is to be kept in mind when investigating. So the options are like too easy. So it is just like contrasting and begging you to choose the option. So if you lose 2 marks here, I would say it's your own choice. In autism, So when an individual exhibits immediate imitation of words, it's echolalia. Imitation of words or sound. Okay, it's echolalia. Echopraxia can be movement. So whatever you move, they can do that also. That's echopraxia. So it's echolalia. Others are just layman's terms. They did not even try to put other technical terms to confuse you, just layman's terms, some of them. So in an individual with multiple cognitive abilities who has extraordinary proficiency in one particular skill is savant syndrome. Asperger's is kind of a autism spectrum disorder that was there in ICD-10. Now it is subsumed under ICD-11 under the autism spectrum disorder. So here a person does not have intellectual disability, does not have difficulty in language. Savant is the right answer here. Rain Man syndrome, oh my God, they need some filters. You understand Rain Man is from the movie, right? So I think that is where this option has come from. Okay, so they have put it. So probably they didn't go through a censor board or something. So yeah, anyway, savant syndrome is the right answer here. Moving on quickly. Autism contains which of the following conditions? According to ICD-10, it did consider had this. It did have Rett syndrome. It also had childhood disintegrative disorder. So all of these. Okay, of course, all of these option is there. So that is what they want you to click. So behavior symptoms that are not included in DSM-5 autism. Imaginative play is affected. So lack of functional play, difficulty distinguishing fantasy from reality, that is not always there in autism. Sometimes maybe there, if particularly there is IDD, or they may have comorbid psychosis, which is also common. So then this is likely to be present, but it's not a defining feature in autism for diagnosis or a presentation itself. They do have trouble with imagination play. So the third one is not the included thing. Okay. Fine. I'll ask you this one. So all of the symptoms are of Mr. S, who has had damage to Wernicke's area. So it's an area in the temporal lobe. Okay. So all of these are symptoms except what? Neologism, lesion or damage in area of left hemisphere, inability to comprehend, inability to speak. You guys can like put, or just say A, B, C, D, or even the full option. So we'll say inability to speak. Okay, good. So that is the correct answer, but they could have phrased it better. So both Wernicke's as well as Broca's are considered aphasia. Aphasia means difficulty speaking or inability in speaking. So they should have put speech output, okay, or something like that. So here also a person in Wernicke's aphasia, also person has difficulty in speaking, but not inability per se. So you can go with, but aphasia basically means inability to speak. So they could have elaborated in terms of difficulties in speech output or something else instead of inability to speak. So that would have been better area and more relevant here. So yeah, this is the right answer. Okay, we'll move on. And yeah, I forgot to mention the other things. Neologisms are also there in aphasia, particularly Wernicke's. They'll misname things or use approximate names and things like that. So that can happen. So it is not neologisms per se. So difficult disturbance of an ability to speak, read, and write is known as. Yeah, this also you guys can answer. Difficulty in ability to speak, read, as well as write. That's also aphasia because it is expressive speech. Okay. So you're expressing through writing, reading, and this one. So there are various forms of aphasia, just not just Broca's and Wernicke's. You have conduction aphasia, you have intercortical sensory, intercortical motor. So there are various forms of aphasia depending on the extent of damage and whether the connecting structures are also damaged. So aphasia is not only localized in Wernicke's area and Broca's area, it also includes the arcuate fasciculus. So reading, writing are also most likely to be affected. Okay. So it's not spatial neglect, it's not apraxia. So apraxia is something, it's a common parietal lobe symptom if parietal lobe is affected. So some conditions have to be met for apraxia. So one person needs to have difficulty in movements which are well practiced, well learned movement, and no disability in the hands or motor output per se. So then we can say apraxia. But anyway, so it is aphasia here. Okay. CBT works on thought, mood state, and behavior. Mood state through thought, not directly on thought. So A and B. So okay, this one is shuffled. So it should be thought, behavior, mood state. So A and B. Shuffling made it a bit messed up. So yeah. Okay. So CBT, if you look at the hot cross bun model, so you have the thought, automatic thoughts come, which leads to feelings and then also physiological sensations at the same time, and then behavior. So as soon as you take a thought for granted and just go with it, the immediate impact is feelings and physiological sensations. We don't directly work on them. We can in terms of some behavioral methods like relaxation, but most likely you work with thought and behavior. So mood is also something which is prolonged. So if they had said affect, then maybe we could have included that. But predominantly, all of these options, mood and behavior, are something targeted by CBT. Which of the following is considered as central tenet of client-centered therapy? Congruence, unconditional positive regard, empathy. So in Rogerian client-centered therapy, these are all important. These are all core conditions of therapy. So all of the above. See, anyway, you find all of the above, they just want you to click it. So it's like easy to do. But do be wary, because if you do click it wrong, you lose 50% of the marks. So that's also one risky thing to keep in mind. Functional analysis is considered under behaviorism, so operant conditioning, not classical conditioning. Functional analysis is basically A, B, C, and also talking about the types of rewards and when does it occur, triggers. So it's morely operant conditioning rather than classical conditioning. Psychodynamic therapy, analysis of resistance. This is a question I would say is confusing because of the options. In psychodynamic therapy, we'll see how many of you are able to get this. Analysis of resistance is where client is asked to talk about anything that comes to mind. Client obstructs the analysis and therapist explores reasons. Therapist interprets the dreams of client. Client transfers feelings towards significant others onto the therapist. Okay, B. Anyone else wants to go for any other options? Anyone thinks it's A also? Okay, B. I'm just going to wait. Kind of feels like A and B, right? So again, it's actually B, but usually analysis of resistance happens during free analysis. So that is why it can be very confusing. So, sorry, what is the exact term? Free association, sorry. So analysis of resistance usually happens during free association when the person gets stuck and doesn't want to continue with that topic, or kind of goes on and on about that topic but not going into the topic. All these things are resistances. Okay, so usually happens during free analysis. Other forms of resistance can also be there. So client obstructing the analysis could mean something else differently. You're analyzing and giving the input to the client, and he's obstructing it. That means something else. So if you look into the specifics and the words used, which they have made a poor choice of, it could be A. But stopping and obstructing or resisting is what is analysis of resistance. So the right answer is actually B. It could be A also because that is what is usually associated with analysis of resistance. But anyway, so we'll go with B only. Oh, wait, sorry. I have maybe marked the A1 in the key. Okay. All right. So both can be. So that is why I marked it both. But apparently, according to Microsoft Forms, you have to click both for it to get as correct. So yeah. So questions can be framed a bit off, and the words that I use can be a bit confusing because they have not clarified enough. And so that is with the question maker's fault. So the link between nervous system and endocrine system is possible through, we already discussed this earlier, hypothalamus. Hypothalamus triggers the pituitary for releasing certain hormones, which again work on the target area, target gland, and they release their hormones. Okay, not corpus callosum, not cerebellum, not reticular formation. So these are very little to do with endocrine system. Neurons, axons are insulated by myelin sheath. So even the spellings are never fiber. Wow. Okay. So I have something I've never heard. So yeah, myelin sheath. The spelling is a bit off, so but you guys can get what they mean is myelin sheath. Okay. Moving on. Miss B tells her partner she needs more appreciation. What module of DBT is she working on? It's not emotional regulation. You can say the person is being patient and working on, but in emotional regulation, you need intense emotions and you're trying to work on it. So that is not what is here. If they had mentioned tip skill or something else like deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, it would have been emotional regulation or even distress tolerance. Okay, so particularly distress tolerance for tip. Interpersonal effectiveness is what is most likely used here. It's not mindfulness either. Okay, so they are able to communicate what they want in kind of an assertive way. So it's interpersonal effectiveness. Mrs. V always seems to focus on negative events. Mr. V in his life. So even when something good happens to him, for example, he got an A on his math test, he assumed that test was too easy, otherwise he would not have gotten good grade. He's more likely discounting or disqualifying the positive, or you could even say minimizing. It's not all or nothing or black or white. It's not that. Shaping is not even related to cognitive errors. Catastrophizing is where you think only the worst outcome is likely to happen. So that is not what is happening. It's discounting or disqualifying the positives, or you could say minimizing. That can also be a possible right answer, which is not there, but we'll go with this. Okay, so this one, many of you may not have had experience with the Rorschach, but still try to take a guess. The reality card of Rorschach is which is the reality card in Rorschach. You guys can answer this. Just put the number. So 7, 6, 5, or 4. You can take a guess. Okay, 5. And anyone else? So how many cards are there in Rorschach? This should be an easy answer. 10 cards. Good. So how many colored cards are there? This can also be a question because this is too simple. I'm asking you another question. How many colored cards are there? How many cards are colored? 5. Okay, wait, let me think. Card 2 is colored. Card 3 is what? Yeah, it also has a color, small light color. Yeah, 5, right? And 7, 8, 9, right? So yeah, 5 colors, 5 colored cards. So anyway, coming back to this question, reality card is card 5. So some cards have their own specialities, they can say. So card 1 is very popular, the bad shaped card. So card 2 is the aggression card. Card 3 is considered as empathy card. They say things, but it's not there in clock form manual as far as I've read. Card 4 does not have any populars, and card 5 has a popular, which is very similar to card 1, where the response is some winged creature. So it is considered the reality testing card or reality card, where they are able to see very common thing that everyone else sees. Okay, card 6 is considered sex card because people usually comment as penis or other genital areas for that card. So card 8 and 9, I'm not able to remember the names for it. Anyway, reality card is card 5. Okay. So any other questions in this? I understand you may not have seen Rorschach, so you may not know, but you can just read up on it. Depends on which institute you're going for. Exner system is kind of common in CIP, I think. In NIMHANS, we still stick to the age-old traditional Klopfer. Some people use Beck. I don't know which institutes use Beck. But I feel like Beck and Exner are more recent, and particularly Beck is better. I've not used them per se, but yeah. Anyway, so a researcher uses a experimental design to study effect of music on memory. An independent variable is music. So obvious. So there's nothing to even think. Independent variable is something that has an effect on something else. On is memory. So music is what the manipulated thing is. Effect of music. So it's music as the independent variable. Normal distribution, most scores are located. This one you guys can try. Where do you think the most scores are located in the normal distribution curve? It's also simple. There's nothing like deep thinking analysis or here something here. So where are the most scores located in the normal distribution? Center, obviously. So at the ends, you have very little cases. That's why from, let's say 33, sorry, not 33, from one standard deviation to the second standard deviation, you have most of the cases, about 64% cases. Okay. So most cases lie in the middle. And for the second standard deviation, it's very less. And for the third, it is even less. So more standard deviation, the more away from the mean you go, more center, away from the center you go, right? Damage to hippocampus is more likely to impair memory, not breathing, not sleep, not balance. If they had said cerebellum or the medulla, so it would have been breathing and something like this. Reticular formation, this, but they have said hippocampus, so it's memory. Which part of limbic system is involved in animals' feeling of hunger? It is hypothalamus. So particularly the ventral hypothalamus is for suppressing hunger. Yes. Lateral hypothalamus is for increasing hunger. So I kind of remember this by LH being let's heat and H being silent. So lateral hypothalamus increases hunger and ventral hypothalamus decreases hunger. So that is one thing you can remember. Which area of the brain stem controls heart rate and breathing? Reticular formation is for arousal, like attentional arousal, physical arousal. So you could argue it's that, but even when there is nothing triggering you, so it can also be an autonomic function which is done by medulla. Thalamus is a relay center in the brain, does not directly involve with heart rate and breathing. Pons is something that is connected to cerebellum, but it's most likely medulla that controls heart rate and breathing. Okay. So which structure allows communication between the hemispheres? Corpus callosum. Okay. So not temporal lobe, not reticular formation, not contralateral bridge. Okay. Anything else? Proprioception is the ability to sense position and movement of a body parts. So this also most of you would know. Okay. So proprio prediction, proprio action, these are just made up words, not something you need to be bothered about. As long as you know the right term, you can easily go with it. Okay. So this one is slightly tricky if you don't know the concept. So let's see how many of you have answered this. Which of the following is not a set of opponent colors according to opponent process theory of vision? Opponent process theory of vision, not emotion. That's also another opponent process theory. So there's an opponent process theory of vision, which they should have mentioned for clarity. That's okay. So which is not a set of opponent colors. No, white or black is there. That's not the right answer. It's not white and black. So there are three sets, basically. Two colored and one uncolored is the assumption. It's not white or black. So you have to look into the colors and say which color. is obviously there are two reds. If red and blue are the opposites, red and green can't be the opposites, right? By logic, you can figure that out. Okay. So it's red and green, which are the actual set. So the not a set is red and blue because yellow and blue is the usual set. If you look at a yellow light and close your eyes, you will find blue. That's the explanation of opponent colors. And if you look at a red light and take your eyes off, close it, you may see red and the vice versa. So it's red and blue. It's not white and black. White and black is also considered. It's kind of, they kind of added on to their initial theory and mentioned white and black. So we don't actually have what do you say, cons for cones, not cons, cones for white and black. Okay. So which of the following is a CNS depressant? Suppressant, basically. Definitely not LCD. Please don't say that. What else? At least they could have said LSD. Definitely not liquid crystal digital here. Could be alcohol, yeah. So nicotine and caffeine are basically stimulants. LSD is a psychotropic, not LCD. LSD is a psychotropic substance. So it's alcohol, which is a CNS suppressant. Okay. Dash waves are to wakefulness as dash are to deep sleep. This one you guys can try. So this is also slightly above the usual ease difficulty here, or below the difficulty here. Should be easy. Anything? Dash waves are to wakefulness and dash are for deep sleep. I'll tell you, it's not alpha for wakefulness. Alpha is not for wakefulness. It may be restful state, but it's not for wakefulness. It's beta because beta is where you are wide awake and you're able to find senses. Sensory stimulation is associated with beta. That happens when you're awake. Okay. So delta is a deep wave thing. So theta is when you're just starting to go into sleep. Okay. So that's theta. Okay. That didn't say anything, but beta theta was the right answer. That's okay. So body's primary circadian pacemaker is suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN. Or if they had said overall, uh, some things like what is a reticular formation, if they had said raphe nuclei, so they could also be part of the circadian, rhythm. But pacemaker is the one that turns it on and off. It's SCN. What did Freud call the hidden psychological content of a dream? Latent content. Not literal content, latent content. Latent is the exact synonym of hidden, so it's kind of self-explanatory, right? So which of the following is not associated with REM sleep? Increased heart rate, decreased limbic activity, dreaming, genital arousal. Which of the following is not associated with REM sleep? Yeah, no, it's not pineal gland. I mean, for the previous one, it's not pineal gland. Increased heart rate, which because usually like are relaxed during REM sleep. That would mean decreased limbic system activity may not always be there, but heart rate increase usually does not happen in REM sleep. Okay, genital arousal can happen, dreaming most likely happens in REM sleep. Out of REM sleep also it can happen. So this is something like most old books would say dreaming is something which happens only in REM sleep, which is not true. Dreaming can happen outside REM sleep also. Okay. So this and this, I even don't remember which one I put based on the answer key. Okay, it's increased heart rate. Because limbic system can also be involved in increasing heart rate and other things, but it is also active in terms of dreams to make you, allow you to have certain sensations within the dream, fear and other things. Okay. So dash parenting combines high responsiveness and low demandingness. This is something you guys can answer. Baumrind had given this. Yeah, decreased limbic system, right? Oh, okay. It says decrease, so it's not there. Correct. So definitely it is increased heart rate. That was, I didn't read as decrease. I may have confused. Anyway, so Laura, What is the full name? I don't remember full name, but Baumrind had given 4 or 3, and then 1 was later added. Parenting styles. Which parenting style combines high responsiveness, low demandingness? You can answer this. So there is warmth and demand. So responsiveness basically means warmth here, as Baumrind had mentioned, which has high warmth but low demand. They don't demand much from the parents. Yes, permissive. At least to make it difficult, they could have asked high responsiveness and high demand. Then you'd have been confused authoritative or authoritarian because they both start with A. It's a bit confusing. So at least they could have made that. Okay. So anyway, we go with permissive. Moving on. Strange situation is a test of attachment given by Mary Ainsworth. Not accommodation, arbitration, nor even assimilation. So these are like not related to it. Piaget believed object permanence occurs in which stage? Okay, so this is a question that some people may find it difficult. So object permanence occurs about 18 months. It is something that marks the end of a particular stage. Not exactly marks, but yeah. Not pre-operational. It is actually sensory motor because sensory motor is 0 to 2 years. Object permanence happens about 18 months, so 1.5 years. It's at the end of the sensory motor that a person develops object permanence. So it is during that stage is when sensory object permanence develops. By pre-operation, they would have already developed it. So they go into pre-operation after having developed object permanence. So it's in sensory motor stage. Okay. Fluid intelligence tends to dash with age, decrease with age. Crystallized intelligence increases with age. Fluid intelligence includes your what do you think? Reasoning ability, your ability to manipulate information in your mind, and crystallized intelligence is about fact. So decrease and increase. Very quickly wind up soon. If a proposed intelligence test turns out to be really a test of patience rather than intelligence, it would be criticized for having low validity. But what validity? Construct consistent is not even a type of validity. At least they could have put content to confuse you guys, or concurrent something else. So construct validity is the right answer. Which of the following is not a cause for forgetting? Decay, yes. Interference, yes. Retrieval inhibition, yes. Selective attention is about you not encoding. Definitely not a cause for forgetting. Okay, this one you guys can definitely answer. Let's see who gets it right. A 3x4 contingency table uses chi-square. You need to find the degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is basically the number of values or number of variables or number of ways in which you know a variable can vary when one variable is fixed. Usually when you have continuous, it's mean, but in chi-square, it's one variable is fixed frequency. So how many other values can this variable take? So what is the answer here? For 3x4, what is the answer? I'll give you a hint. If it is 2x2, the chi-square degrees of freedom is 1. If it is 3x4, what is the degrees of freedom? Not 9. Yeah, it is 6. So usually we see, as I said, the number of values or varies, the number of ways in which the variable can vary. So if we're using 3x4, that means there are 2 variables. Okay. The first variable can take 2 different values. So there are 3 rows, and that means like if the first row is fixed, there are 2 other rows. So row minus 1, and then if there are 4, 4 minus 1. So you get 3 minus 1, 2. Okay. And 4 minus 1, 3. So 2 into 3 is 6. Does that make sense? It is actually 6. So the formula is rows minus 1 into columns minus 1. Okay. So you have many 3 into 4 into 3, which is like not likely to happen. So rows minus 1, columns minus 1 is the product that you're going to get. Which of the following is a classic, is classed as a basic emotion? So basic, advanced, or like later emotions are based on self-reference. So anything that is about self-reference is not a basic emotion. Okay, guilt, jealousy, shame. You have some amount of self-reference here. So these are not basic emotions. So disgust is a basic emotion. Three structures that make the HPA axis. So this is again very simple: hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal glands. Because like it is involved in endocrine system, hypothalamus will always be there, pituitary will always be there, and then whatever is changing, that will be the target glands. When we talk about HPA, it's adrenal gland. Okay, not others. Moving on, Ising says extroverts. So his theory says that extroverts have low activity in their cortisol. They seek more and more activities and stimulation. And introverts try to reduce their stimulation because they easily get challenged by this excess stimulation. So according to him, they seek to increase their arousal while introverts seek to decrease their arousal. Okay, so reward center of breathing is in excuse me, nucleus accumbens or anterior cingulate cortex, which is a part to which nucleus accumbens belongs to. Okay, so that is considered the reward system. So these are like, without options also you can answer them. So it's so easy. Role of hypothalamus is it perceives peripheral sensory input, that is actually thalamus, it's not hypothalamus. Uses past experience to analyze and act on visual auditory inputs. That may be temporal lobe, not exactly hypothalamus. It integrates sensory information from association areas and performs abstract intellectual functions. No. Visceral control over body homeostasis through hormonal system. Okay, so it triggers the pituitary triggers releasing hormones that go and trigger the target glands, releasing hormones which adjust for homeostasis. The direct emotional circuit controlling fear comprises, it is a much shorter circuit involving the subcortical areas. It will most likely involve amygdala. Okay, here thalamus. Okay, thalamus is the relay center. From there, it goes to amygdala and hypothalamus for the hormonal endocrine adjustment. Okay, so this is the direct emotional circuit controlling fear. So that is involving amygdala, thalamus, and hypothalamus. Not necessarily going to the visual cortex and then you interpreting it. So that doesn't likely happen in the direct circuit. Okay. 40-year-old man met with road traffic accident. He was having difficulty in execution of plans. So this is again what? So this is more nuanced than just frontal lobe. So let's see how many of them can answer this. A man met with a road traffic accident. He has difficulty in executing plans. Let's see. No, orbitofrontal. Okay, the answer is DLPFC, because medial prefrontal cortex, orbitoprefrontal cortex are kind of in decision making, also about your internal preferences. So VMPFC particularly is about internal preferences. So what happens is that you have an internal reference table. Oh, I like this more than this and I like this less than that. So those are present in VMPFC, and orbitofrontal cortex is about exploratory behaviors, and DLPFC is about all this execution of plans, response inhibition, and things like that. Okay. So inferior frontal cortex is just the inferior direction, which is again orbitofrontal cortex only. Right. So it's DLPFC. Understand, because it's something that is more nuanced than what you'll read in your masters, or maybe some MSc Clinical Psychology masters may have it. Anyway, damage to cerebellum would most likely result in not visual blindness, loss of coordination, difficulty balancing, particularly eye movements also. You cannot like look up very easily. So that can also happen. Personality changes, no. Visual spatial disorientation, not likely. This is most about movement and adjusting things at the last minute for moving objects and for balance, right? Statistical method developed by Spearman, factor analysis. So he and also Cattle, I'm not sure who's student. I think Cattle is Spearman's student. So they both are, the pioneers in factor analysis. Yeah. Attitudinal scales use different measures, which is not one of them. We usually don't use ratio scale in attitudes, right? So ratio scale requires something to be having an absolute zero. So we they usually range between internal and ordinal. Nominal also sometimes very rarely we use, as in we can give four options and ask which one do you like more without any order that is existing. So that can be nominal as well. Ratio is not unlikely to be present in attitudinal scales. Okay, so it's so easy. Multi-method matrix design is used for analysis of, it's usually for a, what is it called? Construct validity, in which convergent and divergent are some forms of validity saying, okay, these particular constructs are highly correlated with my new test. So that means my test is measuring these constructs in a similar way. And my test is not correlating or negatively correlating with other things. So it is opposite of it, or it is not related to them. So that is a way of construct validity. So that there's the multi-trait, multi-method matrix, not concurrent validity, where you will do, you'll correlate two tests. One is already established, let's say a gold standard test, and your new test. Predictive is for future performance. You do a aptitude test and then see whether they're actually doing well in their exams later, people who are selected. Contact validity, I think they meant content validity. It's not that. Okay. Convergent is a part of uh, construct validity. That is where this is used. All right. You're kind of there. Cronbach's alpha is a measure of internal consistency, not construct validity, not test reliability, not inter-rater consistency. No. People having high cholesterol. Okay, this is a question I felt they could have put a lot of clarity in. Let's see how many of you answer based on their answer key. People having high cholesterol suffer from more hypertension. What is the appropriate statistics used here? Which one do you think? Exactly, that is my confusion. Which one is a continuous variable? Which one is not a continuous variable? So when they say high cholesterol, are they also having a low cholesterol group? They have not mentioned that. If they are meaning high cholesterol have more hypertension, they could have mentioned higher cholesterol levels have more hypertension. That would mean cholesterol is measured on a continuous variable, much more clarity, which they will have like, you'll have more clarity to know cholesterol is a continuous variable. This is the confusion here. So most likely correlation, but we do not know what high cholesterol is measured as, either a continuous or categorical variable. We are assuming it's a continuous variable and going with it. So their answer key is also this. So they could have definitely done like justice here by adding more clarity here. People having higher cholesterol levels have more hypertension. That would have been more straightforward. So this kind of says, if they had higher cholesterol, was there a group of low cholesterol? So is the high cholesterol group having more hypertension than the low cholesterol? So a lot of questions are there, but anyway, we'll go with correlation. Okay. I'm happy that nobody said, huh. Yeah, there is actually a relationship between T and R, right? So if you have actually practiced using the formulas, you'll know that R value is it's converted into T value to test its significance. So T and R actually are not night and day. So T test and Pearson's correlation are kind of very related to each other. So there's a function between each other. So when you perform Pearson's T test, sorry, correlation, you'll have your R value. Okay. So after that, you'll have to find significance. So you'll convert it to a T value for that particular 95% or 90 or even 99% significance. So you'll get a t-value. So it can be convertible between each other. Okay. So that's also one thing adding more confusion here. Anyway, so Flynn effect is when the IQ keeps increasing with more and more generations, with each generation. Average IQ of people slowly but steadily going up over time. Over time may not be a right word here. I would say with generations. That would be a better way to put it. Whole test of Wetzler includes everything except digit span. Okay, so this is something you may not have read on. So there's hold and no hold test, based on which Wetzler used to give brain deviance index or something like the brain BDI. Okay, so basically it's the difference between the score on hold test minus difference between minus the score on don't hold test. Vocabulary is considered a hold test because vocabulary is very unlikely to be disturbed easily, because even it's something that is way deep in your brain structures. Even uh, injuries and things like that do not affect it. So picture completion and object assembly, so they involve a lot of areas in the brain. So a small area being affected does not, greatly affect its performance. Digit span loads highly on your frontal lobe. Okay, so one particular lobe gets affected, goes out of the window, and with age, frontal lobes and fluid intelligence kind of reduces, right? So digit span is considered a don't hold test. Okay, hope that's clear. Recalling sequence of digits forward or backward, right? If I say 1375, you have to say it forward, or you can say it in reverse also in another condition. So you do forward first and then backward. Okay. Flynn effect. Yeah. So most likely crystallized intelligence is what increases. Fluid. I'm not sure about this distinction. Crystallized definitely increases because of the exposure that more and more people get. Okay. And we can expect fluid also because they are getting early exposures to a lot of things in manipulating things like, a tab and all. So to some extent, fluid can also be increased compared to the previous generations. Anyway, so all our scales of MMPI except psychasthenia is there, schizophrenia, mania is there, psychopathic deviate, right? Test of frontal lobe function. WCST is a typical test of frontal lobe function in terms of set shifting, also in terms of response inhibition. You will see a lot of perseverative responses if they are like not having adequate response inhibition. You can also see whether they are able to form new constructs, which is also frontal lobe function. BGD is typically a parietal lobe function. I've not done Nahor, Benson, and Albert test, so I cannot comment more on that. WCST is a frontal lobe function. Okay. Moving on from the big five personality, behaviors such as high levels of discipline, methodical planning, perseverance is conscientiousness. Okay. So in the ocean, conscientiousness is about being productive and being organized, under which you have even sub-facets. So that's conscientiousness, which is related to discipline, planning, and perseverance. Following statements are true of illness behavior, except can be equated with learned helplessness. Okay. It's culturally determined. Not likely. It can be described in terms of stages. Yes, it can be. Contact with doctor is necessary. Yes, it can be. So I'm actually confused between these two. It can be equated with learned helplessness. It's culturally determined. Okay. So let's see who can get this. Out of these two, is it psychopathic deviate? Psychasthenia is also there, no? MMPI dimensions. Oh, psychopathic deviate is there. Psychasthenia is there. Schizophrenia is there. Everything was there. So I think the previous question was just okay. So the question which was earlier about MMPI, it has psychasthenia, psychopathic deviates, schizophrenia, as well as mania, which are all part of it. So I don't know about that question. So I think we cannot go back. I think we can not. Anyway, we'll focus on the right current one. Yeah, illness behavior is that also it can be similar to doctor shopping, getting attention. It's kind of a over generalized though. Anyway, so it can be equated with learned helplessness. It's culturally determined. Even I'm not sure the options which I gave. So this is one question where it can be tricky. Out of all the questions we had so far, this is one thing which is slightly trickier. Okay, so let's go with what you guys say. I believe it may not be culturally determined. Can be equated with learned helplessness. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. So it is not learned helplessness. Equated means it is the kind of the same thing, kind of along the same lines. I thought it was influenced by learned helplessness, so it's not. So you can do mistakes like this. So yeah, A was found missing for 10 days, found in a village 500 kilometers away, was completely unaware of previous identity, working as a field worker, suffering from fugue. So it's not amnesia, because in amnesia you lose parts of your memory, but definitely not identity itself. You may forget other people, but not yourself. It's not dissociative identity disorder because you have alter and host alternating, and it's not factitious disorder. She's not, malingering, or she's not trying to find, some sort of a medical illness or attention or something. It's fugue. Okay. Common type of obsession, it's usually contamination, followed by sexual and doubt. So the most highest is contamination. Label indifference, not Bella. Label indifference is seen in which disorder? So this is also something we have seen in the daily classes, but let's see if you guys can identify this one. I think I did share the PPT. So if you have read it, you can see it. Okay, hysteria. Okay, but where does hysteria fall under in these options? You're right about hysteria in a way because it's related. Conversion disorder, right? So people with OCD do not have it. So label indifference is basically the blissful ignorance. So they are not able to pay attention to something, and that is giving them blissful ignorance. So that is the actual conversion disorder that they are facing. So it can be motivated by secondary gains, even tertiary gains. So primary gain is something else. Okay, so level indifferences, they're not able to notice that, so they are not able to feel pain there. So blissful ignorance or something. Pseudo dementia is a feature of, we just saw this yesterday in the class. Not exactly anosognosia, it's kind of in the same lines of blissful ignorance. So the way we conceptualize conversion disorder and dissociation is that it is maintained by, or it is related to the tertiary gain. Okay. So it is so anxiety provoking for them. So they cut it off from their awareness. So they are no longer aware of it. So they are ignorant. So they are happy. Okay. So that is how conversion disorder is kind of conceptualized. So when the trigger does happen, that is when you have the symptoms. So usually in general, so those things are repressed and they're out of their things. So that is the label indifference. So here it's depression. Pseudodementia is a feature of depression in which they complain a lot about, their memory issues. This is particularly common in the elderly. This is different from dementia, where dementia, they may not even complain because they'll confabulate for the gaps that they have in memory rather than complaining about the memory, which is common in elderly depression. So pseudodementia is seen in depression, not seizure, not Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is an actual dementia. So definitely not. Pseudo dementia and Alzheimer's do not go hand in hand at all, because pseudo versus an actual dementia. So this will not be an option. Alcoholism can lead to Wernicke's encephalopathy, and then later it can lead to what do you call Korsakoff syndrome. So Wernicke's encephalopathy is not dementia. So it's kind of more along delirium. Okay. So depression is the right answer. Following personality disorders characterized by marked impulsive, hostile, manipulative behaviors without feeling of guilt, dissocial or antisocial. Dissocial in ICD, antisocial according to DSM. Okay, so simple. Piaget stages of play. So there are 3 stages where you have symbolic play, so functional play, symbolic play, and then games with rules. Okay, so rough and tumble play is not at all there. So you can remove it. Exercise play is also not a thing that in Piaget's thing. Okay. So what is narrative analysis? So to explain this narrative analysis, a research method, you could say, where you get the narrative or the life story of a person and analyze them based on the sequence of events. So it's a, anyway, just based on the length, you can choose this, an approach that is sensitive to questions of how people choose to sequence and represent people and events. So basically how they say the story, not just that, how they sequence it. Okay. This can also be true if it's a document talking about a recorded story in a way, but this is more likely to be true here. Okay. How are we on time? We do have time. So which of these supports the James Lang theory of emotion? So in James Lang theory, you have the arousal first and then you feel fear. Okay. So visceral changes are same in many emotions. No emotion is a visceral response producing a behavioral response. Viscera are insensitive structures. No. So arousal does happen, right? According to James Lang theory. So it's not that. Artificial induction of visceral changes does not necessarily produce emotion. This is actually a criticism of it, but not necessarily what James Lang theory is about. Okay. Next cognitive process that starts with simple process and builds to higher levels is called bottom-up processing. This would not be the actual definition of it. So in perception, uh, or even in other cases, you have very specific data which you integrate and then you form the whole percept. Okay. But top down, the opposite is you go in with your expectations, you go in with your already formed schemas, and then that influences your perception. So what they mean here is bottom up perception, but this will not be the typical definition of bottom up perception. Internal processing and lateral processing are things to distract people. Fine. Phenomenon whereby individuals in a group tend to end up agreeing with a strong majority opinion instead of their own judgment. I thought group think would be here, but normative influence seems to be the most close option. You go up with the group or the rest of them or the majority because you want to be part of the group. If you wanted to be correct, you didn't know what the answer is, so you go with the majority. That's informative influence. But ideally, you're kind of agreeing in spite of having your own judgment. That is most likely to be, an explanation of group think. You're having your own judgment. You're not expressing it because of in a group. So you go with whatever the people say. But anyway, it's not here as an option. So normative influence would be the most likely and correct answer. Okay. Okay, so the previous one was not narrative therapy. That is analysis as a research method. Okay. Collective cultures are characterized by members who prioritize a larger goal of the group to the group goals. It's all these things are mentioning individualistic cultures, personal goals, strong sense of self. These are all characteristic of individual cultures, individualistic cultures. So Holland had given like way more than just collective and individualistic. There were 6 domains about long-term think, uh, and was a short-term thing. So there are like so many domains. I kind of like forgot about those 6 domains also. So one of the domains is collectivistic versus individualistic. You can read upon that. That'll be nice. So NDPS is about narcotic and psychotropic substances. So it's substance abuse, not disability, child abuse, or any other thing. What is the full form? I'm not able to get. Narcotic Psychotropic Substances Act. D is something I'm not able to get. Anyway, we'll get back to the question later. Who has formulated the stages of grief? Kubler-Ross. Okay. Interestingly, she has also talked about near-death experiences as well. So she researched on people who are about to die, and she would sit by their side. And she also talked to people who lose those, people who are dying. So she found this stage of grief based on death. Okay. So not Kohlberg, it should be morality. Gilligan, wait, I forgot about Gilligan. Rollo May is about, what do you call it? Existential theory. And Hubler-Ross is about the stage of grief, which she got from her work with people who are dying. Carol Gilligan, I'll get back to you on this. Okay, smallest unit of speech is phonemes. Phonemes, when they make a meaningful connection, it's morphemes. Semantics are basically meaning of a particular word. Syntax is the rules for making a sentence. So smallest unit is phonemes. Separation anxiety is a part of attachment in the making phase. Wait, is it clear-cut attachment? So where people indiscriminately laugh and smile at others and then respond to others. Okay, I think it's clear-cut attachment. Let's see what others say. Drugs, okay. So NDPC is Narcotic Drugs Psychotropic Substances Act. Okay, got it. So what do we have here? So separation anxiety, not pre-attachment, not formation of reciprocal relationship. It's either attachment in the making or clear attachment, clear-cut attachment. I would say it's clear-cut attachment. So what do you guys think? Clear-cut, anyone else? Finally, see. Okay, it is correct. So when the attachment is formed, that's most likely to go with separation anxiety. That makes sense. So this is based on Piaget's attachments, I think, right? So Freud's stage of latency corroborates with dash stage of Erickson's. Latency is where the, what stage does it come from? Oral anal latency genital, right? So latency is when they are into schooling and they're not about the earlier developing erogenous zones. There's no particular erogenous zone in this case. So what stage in Erickson does it talk about? 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 7, and beyond that is the genital stage. So we're talking about 4 to 7. Oh, sorry, Bowlby's attachment. Yeah, I was like wrong about Piaget. So it is actually Bowlby's attachment stages. Thanks for bringing that up. Sometimes gets confused. So this one, which one? Definitely not intimacy versus isolation, which is in young adulthood. Okay. Industry versus inferiority is more likely here. Identity versus role confusion is in adolescence. Initiative versus guilt is in much earlier phase. So it is either between these two, but you have to verify for the appropriate age group. Okay. So it's most likely to be industry versus inferiority. So if you look at it, first trust versus mistrust, and then autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, and then industry versus inferiority, right? So going with latency, what they do, so it is more likely to be industry versus inferiority. So Beyond the Pleasure Principle is a book by Freud. That's so straightforward. Okay, so this one, all are mature defenses except dash. Suppression, altruism, humor, projection. Projection, right? So suppression, is not the same as repression, which happens kind of unconsciously. That's not a mature defense mechanism. That's a neurotic defense mechanism. Suppression is like, you biting your teeth and still doing it, even though you don't like it. You suppress the, anxiety, unfriendly emotion, and still face to do it. That's actually mature. Altruism, helping others, is a mature defense mechanism. Humor, making light of, very tough, anxiety-provoking stimulus, is humor. It is a mature defense mechanism. Projection is not. Okay, these are more lower level neurotic defenses. Token economy is a behavior modification technique based on following principles. Positive reinforcement. Discrimination learning does not happen. In tokenomics, you may even take off something if you choose to include, okay, that will be punishment. Response cost can be included in token economy, that will be punishment, but most likely positive reinforcement is what is used here. Definitely not classical conditioning, even though it is likely to happen parallelly. It's more likely positive reinforcement, not discrimination learning. Okay. So moving on. Insulin is released by pancreas. Islets of Langerhans in pancreas releases insulin, not medulla, thyroid, or pituitary. For Skinner, basic issue in how reinforcement sustains and controls responding. Okay, so the basic issue that he addressed is reinforcement sustains and how it controls responding, rather than which stimulus can be generalized, which stimulus evokes a response, which response is helpful, which stimulus can be discriminated. So which is more basic for Skinner. So this is basic for him instead of this. So basically he's against this one, right? What do you say? Classical conditioning. He is a radical behaviorist. He talked about like reinforcement being the main thing. So he doesn't concern about which evokes a response. So classical conditioning is something he's against. Okay. Not against. It is just something that he does not consider. He dismisses it. So Jung used the term collective unconscious to indicate unconscious tendencies inherited by an individual from primordial racial tendencies. Okay, kind of cultural would have been a better word. Racial tendencies kind of there. Unconscious potential of a group or mob is not that. All the factors together constitute strengthen individual's unconscious. No. Effect of all unconscious urges which make a person's behavior problematic. It can be shadow, but not necessarily collective unconscious itself, which is a part of that. A child has two alleles of every gene in his body, one from mother, one from father. Alleles from both parents differ, heterozygous. Definitely not twins. That's to confuse you. Ability to perceive and understand a situation or incident from another perspective's viewpoint is social foresight. What even is projection here? Illusion. At least give something more similar and confuse people, no? So social foresight is the correct answer here. Perception without sensory stimulus, hallucination. So straightforward. Don't even think about other things. It's not a different process. It is just attention to irrelevant stimulus that are not part of the main assigned task. Definition of distraction. Not span of attention. It's not division of attention. It's not shifting of attention. Okay. So it's distraction. Which of the following is not one of the four major approaches to qualitative research? Non-experimental, right? So qualitative research is about, what do you say, like words, you analyzing texts, you analyzing interviews, so you taking observations and then qualitatively describing it. So ethnography, phenomenology, case study, grounded theory, those can be four major approaches. Case study can both be a qualitative as well as a quantitative approach. That's up to how you design it. Definitely non-experimental is a quantitative approach. In phenomenology, a well-written report will be descriptive of participants' experiences, will elicit in a reader feeling that as though they are experiencing the phenomenon themselves. This experience is called a vicarious experience. So they are being with them, and then they are feeling or going through the same experience. Okay. Phenomenology has its discipline in philosophy. Edmund Husserl and his student, right? What is Husserl's student name? Edward Husserl and Heidegger. Yeah, I have difficulty recalling things. Anyway, so which of the following is not a form of non-random sampling? Non-random, non-random. They are all forms of non-random. All of the above. Basically, when there's all of the above, they are basically the right answer. In this paper, at least, don't generalize it to the coming paper. So you may be in the wrong also. They may have improved it. Anyway, so illnesses that seem to result from interaction of physical and psychosomatic. Part of the brain that sends signal alert to higher centers of the brain in response to incoming messages is reticular formation. We talked about arousal, alerting and increasing the arousal for an incoming message. It doesn't say a threat. Then you could have thought about amygdala or even limbic system in maintaining something. So reticular formation sends alert signals even for waking up and not sleeping. So sleeping can also be involved in reticular formation because it reduces alertness, arousal. So dash lobus to hearing, temporal as occipital is to vision. Parietal is for somatic as well as visuospatial. Cerebellum is for balance, coordination, and even movement. So here hearing is temporal. Okay. Role of positive and negative reinforcement is to increase behavior. Where is that? To increase likelihood responses preceding negative reinforcement, no. To increase likelihood that responses preceding both will be repeated. Responses preceding both, yeah. So it increases that. So this is more likely so far. Decrease likelihood responses preceding, no. To ensure there are no negative consequences, no, not that. So it is this. Okay. So that's it. We've finished this in 1 hour, right? No, 1.5 hours. Okay. With the explanation. So that's a good time. All right. So any doubts or questions here in what we discussed? So this was a very easy paper. Very few questions were a bit confusing. Okay. So most of them you did not even like have to look at the options. You just go like answer it as such.